Hello and welcome to episode 4 in this Azure Data Factory Zero to Hero series. Now previously we've looked at setting up Azure Data Factory, some of the dependencies. We've looked at our first sort of standard, simple data pipeline. Now we're going to look at creating an Azure SQL database, a sample database, what you need to do to activate this. And it's important because this is going to be one of the main dependencies we look at when we're looking to sort of transport and transform data that's actually structured. So within a relational database, columns and rows, and we want to map certain elements over. So the first thing we need to do is go to the Azure portal, as you saw me do, search SQL database, and we can create one. We need a subscription. So for us, that would be our Azure subscription that we've previously set up. And in this case, we actually want to set up a new resource group. I've taken there are some things that we need, some actions that we need to perform to set up this sample database as per sort of Microsoft guidance, so that we get the most cost-effective database for us, one that really won't cost anything. So I'm just going to call the database my sample database. It's important to follow on there, the same as my resource group. And the server, we can create a new server. We do have to give it a slightly unique server name. So if you follow along with me, what we can do is we can go ahead and name this. So I will call this MySQL Server, and we need to do that in the same format as I did, lowercase. But then we need to go ahead and give it something unique, because it can't be a server name that's already taken. So I'll just put Azure Data Factory Zero to Hero. And then we can go ahead and specify a region. For me, my closest region is UK West. That's important. It's important to select the right region for a number of compliance and data residency factors, data backup, and so on. So it's just best to place it where you're physically creating your Azure SQL database from. We'll select Use SQL Authentication, and we can just give the recommended standard user name or admin login of Azure user, and then we're going to select a password. This should just be standard, as you would with any password, unique and following the constraints or the naming guidance that Microsoft has laid out. Once you've done that, you can click OK and we can move on. So now we're just essentially reviewing what we've selected. We'll leave everything to default here on this page, as you can see on my screen. The only thing that we actually want to do is go into the general purpose, and we want to configure the compute tier to serverless. And that should cover what we need to do. You'll see terms like vCores, DTUs, whatever that may be. But this is just essentially giving us the right firepower for what we are going to need to do. As you can see, the cost is very minimal if we even use anything, but that will it's scaled automatically as per your requirements. So if you were using this in an enterprise environment, you may want to go ahead and ramp that up. You actually likely would, just for things like performance and when allocation or storage increases. Now we can move forward to networking. We just want to specify a public endpoint here. And in the firewall rules, we just want to put add current client IP address. We want to switch that to yes. And in the connection policy, we can leave that at default. And the TLS version for the encrypted connections is fine. So we can move on to security from here. Again, in security, there's nothing that we actually need to configure. Obviously very helpful in a more enterprise-focused environment, but for us, for what we're doing in ADF, not essential. And the data source, the only thing we need to change here, in existing data, we want to select sample, because this will give us access to the AdventureWorks data, and we can play around and query with our new SQL database. This may come in handy later, especially if you want to practice an ADF, shifting data about, having that available, and probably improving your Azure SQL skills. That would be helpful as well. So after that step, we can go ahead and review and create. As you can see, we get an estimated cost as per the resources that we've selected. And as I say, if you're working in a more fast-paced, enterprise, professional-driven environment, you may want to scale that up. But it's a pretty, Azure SQL is a pretty cost-effective solution as it's run in the cloud. So we can review everything that we've selected, and when you're happy with that, go ahead and click Create, and this will deploy our Azure SQL resource. Okay, so from the deployment notification, we can actually just simply click Go to Resource, and we can view all the overview details about our new database. But if you actually go to the left-hand side and click on Query Editor in the preview mode, you can enter your password, and we've actually got this web browser experience to query our data, whereas normally we may connect to SQL Server Management Studio or VS Code. We can actually see our tables here, and I'll just do a quick demonstration of me just writing a couple of simple queries to gain insights from our data. So yeah, great to be able to use this in the web browser, much the same as Azure Data Factory. And obviously, for what we're going to do with the more complex transformations, ETL processes, pipelines, it's important to have structured data in Azure SQL. So if you don't already have a SQL environment set up, this video may, or hopefully was helpful. And as usual, if you like the content, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you.